While Gateway sessions drew a growing public audience, Robert Monroe maintained a quiet, dedicated volunteer group running experiments back at the laboratory. He narrowed the weekly circle down to 6 highly educated professionals: a physicist, an electronics engineer, a social services executive, a transpersonal psychologist, an office manager, and a psychiatric counselor. To protect their careers, Monroe hid their true names. Their initial sessions closely mirrored his own out-of-body experiences, but as the experiments continued, their results began to deviate from his established patterns. This professional anonymity and strict protocol transformed these subjective, personal experiences into isolated, trackable data points for an institutional audit. Every session centered on an 8x10 isolation room known as Booth 2. The chamber was sealed against sound and stray electricity, with a heated waterbed in the center. To enforce sensory deprivation, researchers glued electrodes to the subject's head and body. Headphones sealed out the physical world, and a microphone was suspended just inches above the face. Down the hall, a monitor tracked physiological shifts on the instrument panel, while feeding precise hemisync frequencies into the booth. The apparatus was designed to sever consciousness from physical stimuli, ensuring that any data gathered by the microphone originated entirely from within the subject. One of the earliest recorded entries, test number 188, described the office manager being pulled through a tunnel at high speed into a pressurized dimension of vibrant green light. However, a complication emerged. Once subjects achieved the out-of-body state, they lost interest in frequency testing and preferred to explore familiar locations, like the streets of Paris. The team attempted a compromise by letting them explore the moon and neighboring planets, but the subjects found nothing there but endless craters and dead gas. Baseline physical reality, even on a cosmic scale, was insufficient to sustain the experiment's momentum, forcing a change in methodology. In 1974, Monroe introduced a new protocol. Subjects were required to read the Gateway Affirmation aloud right before the session began. This shift had an immediate effect, seemingly lifting a curtain for every volunteer. Simultaneously, the isolated subjects began encountering intelligent beings willing to communicate. From this moment onward, the group was officially classified as the Explorer Team. The introduction of this single variable moved the research into a new phase. The laboratory monitors moved from tracking physiological data to documenting conversations with external intelligences. The transcripts soon revealed a highly structured environment. In Test 332, a physicist encountered an entity who explained that her world possessed its own rigid physical laws and geometric structures. During Test 356, an executive made contact with a green-robed overseer who claimed responsibility for her personal development. In Test 325, an engineer contacted a being who described Earth as its assigned beat for guiding humans. When asked about future geological conditions, this entity expressed surprise that such restricted information had been shared with humans at all. These guides were not merely observing the volunteers, they were actively evaluating their non-physical energy patterns. The transcripts describe a consistent, structured environment, one where human development is overseen by a hierarchy outside our own. The interactions soon escalated. In Test 306, 4 entities reportedly lifted the subject's energy body and tested using her vocal cords as a transmitting line. This reached a climax in Test 314. As the subject floated toward a light, an unrecognized voice began speaking through the control room intercom. This new voice analyzed the subject's fear and her energy pattern. When she woke, she had no memory of the exchange. Researchers realized the phenomenon was no longer confined to the subject's internal visions. External entities were now interacting directly with laboratory equipment through the human vocal tract. These encounters were not dependent on a subject's belief system. A visiting skeptic entered Booth 2 expecting nothing, only to report 4 invisible entities attempting to pull her out of her body. The entities only withdrew when a 5th voice arrived to stop them, at 5:10 p.m., the exact scheduled time for a normal Explorer session. By operating on the laboratory's strict physical timetable and targeting a non-believer, the entities demonstrated a presence that did not depend on the subject's own psychology. Physical anomalies began appearing outside the booth, including the repeated draining of car batteries strictly within a 60-foot radius of the isolation room. Inside the lab, audio from magnetic tapes unexplainably bled from one layer to another, imprinting sound through the physical barrier of the tape. The commercial recording industry would have coveted this print-through effect, if only it had been reliable enough to scientifically control. These incidents suggested that the out-of-body state was generating a measurable physical influence, one capable of interfering with electronics and magnetic media far beyond the isolation booth. The weight of these encounters eventually dispersed the team, leaving only 2 of the original 6 members behind. The thousands of hours of tape they left behind remain as evidence, a record of consciousness acting as a receiver for information that originates beyond the physical body.